Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fun Friday. Today with a friend, partner, and capital raiser. He has a great title. It's Shalon Hutchinson, aka Hutch the Marine Investor, who is the co-founder of H Squared Capital. How are you today?
I am thriving, my brother. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It's always so great to talk with you because I always feel so much more positive. You put a smile on my face. It's just great energy at all times. So I'm excited for the show. Well, let's get into the show today. There's some things that really stick out to me about you. So let's just start with when I first met you. I believe it was at Race Fest in Louisville a couple years
Mhm.
ago, and you had the hat on, and it was Hutch the Marine, and it was very niche and specific. And I think one thing that we've all learned, especially if you're really in the syndication space and you're looking for audience when you raise equity, is if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And it's very clear, obviously you don't want to box in all your investors. I'm sure they're far and wide, but I have to imagine the core of it starts with the military folks, as you, of course, are active duty. And thank you for your service. And we'll get into your background there. But I guess first off, just tell me a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and what you're doing today on top of the equity side for your day today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So to answer you for the first question, who am I? I am an ever evolving spiritual being who understand that where I am today is a result of all the actions and decisions that I've made in the past. And what I become is directly will correlate to the decisions that I made going forward to include the partners I choose to work with. So background, Shalon Hutchinson. I was born and raised on what used to be a coffee slave plantation in Jamaica. For the first 13 years of my life, I walked to school bare feet. And I don't say that to say, oh, poor me. I say that to look, whenever I measure backwards and I look at my journey, to me, I've come a far way. And that is directly attributed to the people that I choose to surround myself with, and also my constant shift in paradigm by always willing to grow. So that's where I come from in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
you've been active duty for quite some time now. Is that correct? I think you're running on to what's around a 20-year plus
25
career in
years.
military.
Yeah, I tell you, Craig, here's the thing, man. We have some thoughts every now and then, and we never know how that's going to come to fruition, right? And I remember sitting in the third grade in Jamaica in the countryside of a place called Juan de Bolas, right? I probably was bare feet because I was in the third grade. And I was reading what's called the Children's Own. It was mandatory reading for school age children. And there was a hometown news in the paper. And it was this Jamaican guy who was in America and he was working on an aircraft aboard a ship. And at that point, Craig, I tell you, in the third grade, I made the decision that if I ever go to America, I have no idea how this was going to happen, right? But if I told myself, if I ever go to America, I want to join the military and I want to work on aircraft. And if you look behind me right now, this is three helicopters flying alongside the volcano in the Big Island of Hawaii. And right here is another 53s on a ship, right? So I made it to America. I work on aircraft and I also work aboard a ship. So in the Marine Corps. So it goes to show that we have these thoughts every now and then. And with a focus, we can make a lot of things come to fruition. So fast forward moved from Jamaica in 98 in August of 98. And by September of 98, I was standing on the yellow footprint, becoming a Marine, and then got the military occupation skill of being an airframe and hydraulics mechanic on CH-53 Delta and Echo helicopters.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
honestly have chills thinking about that because that is manifesting and it really makes me so proud that you are in fact an American now, I would assume, but you've
Oh
served
yeah.
your military, you've paid your dues, you have paid it forward. And I just out of curiosity, what does the American dream mean to you? And that's something that we hadn't talked about from a pre-question, but it begs the question when you talk about that because it seems like you may be living your version of it. When you're growing up, not in the country, probably from economically speaking, not the richest and abundant background. With that said, what does the American dream mean to you as you stand here today with in the military, raising money? What are your thoughts pertaining to that?
Yeah. So we are in an environment that is ever evolving, right? Warfare is evolving. The way we live our life is evolving. A lot of the things that matters to us is constantly evolving as well. And the efficiency of the way we live our life is evolving. So the American dream for me is that America continue to be the country of choice that everyone wants to live. because there's so much opportunity here, and we have the economic structure, and not just economic structure, but the confidence from our people and also from foreigners that this is the most secure place to live and invest. My dream is that America continue to progress and continue to maintain our standing in the world as the number one place that people want to live and continue to prosper. That's the American dream for me. And the
Right.
reason for that, Craig, is look, I want to live, my commitment right now is to live to 103 years old. I don't know that's going to happen, right? But that is the goal. So what I'm doing towards that is ensuring that 10 years at a time, I want to be, so I'm 44 right now. By the time I'm 54, I want to be in better shape and healthier than I am now. And if I continue to do that, then I think until the good Lord call me home, I might live to see 103 years old. So I need to see America prosper. Additionally, I have three beautiful children. What we create in real estate right now is definitely to improve myself and Athena's lifestyle, because my kid's going to go out and they're going to live their own life. But at some point, I want to give them an unfair advantage in the future by creating certain vehicles for them to fall forward on and ensure that our bloodline never have to walk to school bare feet again, and they can continue to progress. So, in
That's
a nutshell,
beautiful.
that's a long way of explaining my American dream.
That's awesome. Now we understand a little bit more about the why and how you tick and why you're so meticulous with what you do day in and day out. The vision is very clear. And I think having a family and having your unique experience definitely provides the why, very much so for you. So, with that said, obviously you have a military background. There probably wasn't a clear path to get into real estate. So, how, in fact, did you get into real estate?
Yeah, so when I came to America in 1998, my dad was a real estate agent. He was also a real estate investor. And it's clear when you look at society, a lot of the things that we do are teachings of our small community, are teaching of our parents, teaching of our churches. Our close environment shapes the paradigm. So when I came to America, my dad was telling me about how I can own some of America, right? He was an agent, he was also an investor, but he was utilizing the method of driving around neighborhoods and finding distressed property, a place where you might have a busted window or the grass is overgrown, and then identifying who owns that property and then make an offer with the hopes that you can create a win situation where you solve a problem for them and you get to profit as a real estate investor. I moved to Hawaii shortly after graduating from my military occupation school, and I got married a few years later. I wanted to buy a house because that's what I identified with what my dad was teaching me. I need to buy a house, be able to fix it up, and be able to sell it for a profit in not so distant future. But as a young man, when I got married, I was a young sergeant. I could not afford a house in Hawaii, but I could have afforded a condo. But I didn't know what a condo was because my dad told me about a house. I didn't even know how to differentiate the difference between a condo and apartment.
Right.
So we didn't buy a house until about 5 years later after our marriage. And actually it was a condo. We bought it for $161,000. And within 6 months, we sold it for almost $240,000. And
No.
that was a game changer. So we identified that in the military, we get access to this thing called the VA loan, where we can go and buy a property with zero money down. And we was able to buy a property for 161, sold it for almost 240 in 6 months. So that gave me, I got the bug right away. Every time we sell a property, we buy another property utilizing the VA loan. Fast forward in 2017, I was moving from California to Florida. I decided to do a scenic tour, went a scenic route. We went to some national park, we went to Yosemite, went to Pikes Peak, the Garden of the Gods out in Colorado. We went to Mount Rushmore and Niagara Falls, and made it down to New York to see my dad. Now, my dad is always improving the things that he's doing. So now he told me about these people who was driving around or was flying around America and teaching people how to flip property utilizing other people's money. And remember, Craig, a lot of the things that we learn is taught by our parents, a small community, our churches, right? So my dad was continuously mentoring me of where I can level my game up. So he told me about it, got down to Pensacola, attended a 3 hour seminar and then a 3 year conference that taught us flip properties. Now, they did something that was unique. They showed us where to start, but they also gave us a little peek behind the curtain of what was possible, and that was multifamily properties. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it.
Yeah, so actually, it was going to beg the question is, and you took us right there, was you obviously started single family. It's the natural progression, which has been covered on the show at nauseum, of course. But then you find the multifamily space. So at what point did you discover syndication, and did you realize, oh, this is my ticket to force value creation and all that?
Yeah, so it's important. One of the my New Year's resolution. I forgot which year that I wrote it. It might have been 2016 or 2017. And it was take action on any information that you ask for. Because there's a difference between you realizing that you need to become smarter or you need a shift in paradigm or what you're doing currently is not working and it can be improved. You see a lot of folks that said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's why a lot of us, we go through a career, 60-year career working the same job, right? And a lot of times we don't even like that job. But I had this neighbor that tell me, Hutch, I get it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But if it can be improved, then it might as well be broken. In the single family space, they showed us what was possible in the multifamily space. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. So now we're craving for more. And I started asking a lot of questions. One of our good mentors down in Pensacola, Bob Preston, an amazing individual, super quiet, but also super knowledgeable in the real estate environment. He helped us to hone in on what was possible. He tell us like, look, if you want to level up, it's important for you to focus. And after doing some flips in Pensacola, we realized that it took us 14 months to do the last one. And we realized that we could have done maybe a 14 units in that timeline. So when my wife and I, we sat down at the kitchen table and we did what I like to call after action reports. And what that is just looking at what worked, what didn't work, and what can be improved. And we realized that everything we were doing in the single family space was to get to multifamily eventually, because those fortune builder guys, they showed us what was possible in real estate syndication. So in 2019, my wife Athena and I, we made a goal. We set a goal to syndicate or co-sponsor 100 units by the end of 2019. We ended up doing 55 units co-sponsor that year. So the beautiful thing about that, Craig, is that 100 units was a big, audacious goal for us, huge, going from single family. But I'm really happy we didn't set it at 10 unit because we probably would have acquired five. So we set it at 100, and that was a good goal to fail at. And we co-sponsored 55 units in 2019. And that was the start.
Now let's switching gears from the origin to your niche. So Hunter talks about this all the time, of course, Hunter Thompson, and anyone who is going to teach you about raising equity is finding kind of an avatar, which is a profile that you speak to and who you're probably most like yourself. Me being a real estate agent, if I was in my past career, if I was to raise capital independently, I would likely be targeting real estate agents, right? Naturally, you are a Marine, so your branding is Hutch the Marine investor, of course. Can you speak to really targeting down your avatar and how you speak with and attract investors? I think that might be really valuable for people to listen and unpack there, how you angle your branding, how you angle your conversations, and also convert a lot of your investors. So if without further ado, please unpack your strategy and angling there, please.
Yeah. They said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, Craig. And the next best time is today. Now, one of the things right now, over 80% of our investors are veterans, right? But we don't wait until they have exited the Marine Corps or exited the military. We now start as we saw them transitioning from the military or any branch of service. If you look on LinkedIn, this is something that you can filter out as far as transitioning veterans. A lot of folks put that in their title. And those are the folks that we are reaching out to. The reason being is that we can speak their language. We have been through some of the same environments. In the Marine Corps, we don't have a plethora of places that we can be stationed, right? East Coast, West Coast, in the Southeast, and someplace overseas. And we all serve in combat, especially during my time in the service. We all serve in some of the same areas as far as combat goes and deployment. So we can share what we call war stories, right? And that is just understanding what kind of value system that they develop or that they improve in combat. What did they learn about themselves in combat, or even just some austere environments? How did they lead themselves? How did they lead their fellow men and women? And we can understand, how do they have growth, right? Or are they complainers? If they're complainers, then they're not our ideal people to work with, right? If they found growth working in an austere environment, making themselves better, making the ones around them better, those are the people that we want to work with. So initially, Craig, when we started out, it was focusing on veterans. But now going forward, we are niching down a little bit further, and we're now focused on retired veterans who are accredited investors who own a small business. So those are the people that we transition in our conversation to right now. And that identify with Ace Capital, right? So myself, Even though I'm still on active duty, in about 24 months, I will be what we call a veteran, exit the Marine Corps. Uh, Pretty confident I'll be a accredited investor by then. Last time I checked, I was about $5,000 off. I think it's about $3,000 off. So I'm getting there. So I'll be a retired veteran, accredited investor, and of course, own a small business. So those are the guys we want to bring into our ecosystem because now we can niche down and speak in a comparable language and also share war stories.
I love that. That's really special. So, would you just unpack why, logically speaking, you're angling there? Obviously, that's who you are, but is there any other tidbit and the value with background on the conversations that you have when you speak to a potential investor with basically knowing their pain points? Is the conversation very fluid because you are so specific to who you're speaking to?
Yes. And the thing is, Craig, whenever I speak to a veteran, the first intention is not for them to become investors. If we get there, that's a good thing, right? But when we have a conversation with our veterans, for me specifically, it's about educating them on what is possible. See, I'm not in the business of telling people that they need to quit their day job and you can quit your job in 30 days, all that good stuff, especially with our veterans. I see the value that our veterans bring to corporate America. One of the things that he's talking about is that we have a leadership crisis in America. I don't have the data to prove that point, right? But I see the value that my fellow men and women, especially those who are staff and CEOs and officers, feel great and above, or even just the officers. I see the value that they bring to corporate America because I work with these people. I see how much they care about people, right? And in the military, a lot of people think we're in a war fighting business, but we're in a people business because it takes a deep level of leadership to be able to get somebody to put a steel on target or troops in zone. That takes some leadership, right? So when I talk to these folks is to help them to understand what's possible. And look, Craig, one of our main function, we're war fighters. And it's important that the American military is ready whenever a country is least prepared. And the same is true with our family, right, Craig? If I die today, it's important that my family is ready, that they can continue to enjoy the lifestyle we've created because we have created a system where they are prepared, especially financially. So when I speak to our veterans, I correlate the two to help them to understand our obligation to the country, but also our obligation to our family and the importance of ensuring that synergize because we don't have two lives. We don't get to live a life as a service member and then go live a life as a husband, father, brother, sister, whatever the case may be, right? It's important that whatever we do, synergize and financial stability and understanding the way money works is a really important part of developing that synergy. So we start there. We start with understanding where they are in their life and what is possible, what we're doing and why we're doing it, and provide better education to them and help them to understand how does that translate to their family and the things that are most important to them. Because look, some people go through their entire military career and never have a family. But those same people, they have nonprofit organization that they are committed to. And if that's what gives their life purpose, then passive investment through real estate can also help them to contribute to that purpose as well. And for the ones who have family, then it helps to improve the trajectory of their bloodline. So we start with education and understand the synergy that we need to have in our one life.
No, that's very interesting. And speaking of synergies, speaking of education and basically financial literacy, it's what it really boils down to, which is making sound choices with the money that you're making. Especially, it seems as if it's a very sensitive topic here, but it can feel like a hard landing for a lot of people who are active duty, who maybe are 18, who've got a decade, 2 decade long careers in the military. Now it's like an NFL player, almost totally different naturally, but it's now what I do with the rest of my life. Now what do I do? How do I set this up? What resources are there and available to a lot of Marines and active duty people? There's obviously the homeless crisis with veterans, which is just another tangent. It's really disheartening. But do you think this is your God-given calling in many respects to reach out to people and be the end of the bridge to a softer landing and to educate them and provide them options if there is alignment in your conversation?
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that I'm reluctant to bring on active duty members as passive investors, right? So we wait until they're veterans. So maybe we retire, then we can start the transition a lot early because one of the biggest pain points that a service member have whenever they transition from the military or they in between jobs is making up the difference between their active income, right, and their retired income or the income that they receive on active duty versus when they retire. There's a gap there. So we get what's called the basic allowance for housing, BAH, and we also get our basic pay. And whenever you transition from the military, you now, if you exit at 20 years, you get 50% of your basic pay. So you lose the basic housing allowance. So that you're looking at now maybe a good 60% of income that you need to make up whenever you retire from the Marine Corps, or even more. So the idea would be is in the future to start the transition a lot earlier to where they're committed to creating passive income. It doesn't have to be through real estate, but just educating them on the way money work and ensuring that they're turning their active income into passive income, right? It gives them cash flow that they can sustain their lifestyle in between transition. Because look, Greg, homeless crisis, a lot of folks, they exit the Marine Corps, the military, and it's challenging for them because they lose the sense of belonging sometimes. They lose the focus of the mission ahead. And if they're having a hard time finding a job and they need to provide for their family, that's a lot of stress on people. So if we can help to bridge the gap by creating passive income a lot earlier, right? So whenever they exit the military, 20, 30 years, then they have already filled that gap and working is a choice.
I love that. And
Yeah.
would you say there's, I guess, a bit of an educational gap that's maybe misserved right now in current policy? Do you think there's a way to enhance that by giving some sort of free education or background? Of course, there's a GI Bill, which kind of subsidizes colleges to a certain degree. There's ROTC, which is, of course, if I'm not mistaken, you become an officer or higher ranked, following the completion of that. And there's like, you get it paid for if there's like a decade-long military service associated there. If I'm not mistaken, of course, you would know best. But do you just think there's just an overall educational gap where there's just not a lot of, resources out there? I think we all talk about this amongst people like yourselves, like us. It seems like the education of the public system does not serve or train anyone for financial literacy. And then, so you go through that process and then you go right to the military. Is there literacy classes or educational information out there? Or would you say there's a gap for people to have that knowledge?
Yeah, 100%. But it will take a leader that is 100% all in to pass that information, right? So on a monthly basis or periodically, we should be doing counseling and mentoring for all service members. And in those counseling, we have what's called the 6Fs mentoring. The 6F is a holistic concept where every service member that sit down with their mentees, they should be looking at the whole concept: faith, fidelity, finance, fitness, right? And if you're looking at the holistic concept as a mentor, then every Marine Corps, every Marine should have a plan for when should have an exit strategy, whether it's 4 years or 20 plus years, right? And it takes leaders buying in or actually leaning in and mentoring those young men and young women. The information is there, Craig. I would be lying if I tell you that the information is not accessible. But the things that I tell my children and also tell our junior Marines, look, we will do things whenever it becomes important to us. John Maxwell said that people change whenever staying the same becomes too painful.
Right.
We will live our life and we hear these things and they come to us. But if we're not seeking that information, we might not find use for that information. So the information is there, Craig. And every Marine that leaves the Marine Corps has to go through the transitional readiness. And there's also entrepreneur limb for that transitional readiness. And also every year, the Naval Academy requests for active duty members to apply for a seat in the Naval Academy to go to college and become an officer, right? So the information is there that we can leverage, but it's all about, are you wanting it? I remember I said earlier that one of my resolution or affirmation is take action on any information that I asked for. And I think a lot of us are in that situation as well. We will only find use in information that we ask for, or value.
Yeah, that makes sense. Switching gears and transitioning to deals that you raise for, what are the profiles? Of course, we had the honor and privilege to work together where you brought your investors to our second most recent closing, I should say, the Houston 3 property portfolio, which we were very grateful to have you as a partner and to start a partnership there. But what deals do you typically raise for? Is it only multifamily or do you look at any other asset classes?
Yeah, so right now it has been multifamily. Look, I don't have the bandwidth to learn a bunch of different asset classes. We have focused on multifamily. In the past, we've done C's and B's, but I think going forward right now, the focus is going to be on B class property. Reason being, we've worked on some C class properties, and it's like trying to turn around an aircraft carrier. That stuff does not happen overnight. You know what I mean? And in 2019 and 2020, all that stuff was nice and shiny and pretty because we can do this great value add, but that is so much work. And we're not afraid to do the work, but you can make comparable returns leveraging or purchasing a B class property or a B class property in a B plus neighborhood. And there's several more strings that you can pull on if it's a 600 plus almost 700 units that give you the economy of scale. And it also gives you a lot more flexibility with maneuvering your business plan. So going forward, I want to focus to be on B class multifamily properties.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something right now that logically speaking, the market gives opportunities and it makes sense in certain situations. But seeing as the market is changing a bit and there's a bit bigger of a spread and maybe not as much rent to be captured on the upside for these opportunities, it certainly makes most sense to focus on the B range and work in alignment there as well. Unless there's a screamer, how could you not opportunity? It might make sense, but by and large, the market is very fluid and there's very rarely unicorns, of course. So when you are making a real estate investment or raising money for opportunities, what do you look for when you're looking at deals? Is there any sort of assumption that you're seeking? Obviously, you said you like B class. What other indicators get you excited about a deal?
I must tell you, Craig, the first place I start is the sponsor. That's the first place I start. Now, I believe based on my assessment, there's money to be made in any market and also any market cycle as well. Now, what will make that happen is the quality of people that we choose to work with. And our first introduction to Lone Star Capital was an interview with Rob Beardsley back in, say, 2020. It was phenomenal. Myself, my business partner, and I, Dr. Jones, we were blown away by this young man's intellect and just being able to watch his growth since then to now over $500 million in assets under management. It's phenomenal. Rob has a quote that says, most people have goals. I'm just the one bold enough to accomplish them. Like this guy.
And if my arithmetic serves me correctly, that's when he was 23-ish. So 23, 24, which is a bold thing to say. But when someone is actually acting upon it and doing it, it's okay. Well, anyone can say anything, but the X factor is the execution and speed. So I'm sure it's, oh, wow, that's a little bit unique. I have to imagine.
Yeah, 100%. That's the first place I start is with that sponsor. And we have followed Lone Star Capital over the years. And then last year at Race Fest, we kind of solidify that I like these guys. I like the team. I got to meet Dasha for the first time. She was a sweetheart, very open to sharing information and having a dialogue about just business in general. And that was impressive to be able to speak with the team because look, I don't have anyone to go talk to as far as why Bitcoin went up and down or why Tesla stocks fluctuates. I don't have the luxury, but I can call Dasha, I can call yourself, we can talk to Rob and say, can you help me to understand for investor or even and for us what is going on at this property and be able to, okay, that makes sense. And if I want to travel there, then I can travel there and I can see for myself if I want to. Just like we met up there last year to walk the 3-pack in Houston. So those are tangible assets. And also with a team that is making decision that we have direct access to. And for me, that is good. And I think the biggest thing is just being able to speak to the team that are making decision to get more clarification because we are putting our own money into these deals as well too. So I have an obligation to my wife Athena and our children to be able to explain, okay, ups and down, here's how much money we're making. Which unfortunately I'm happy that this deal has been cash flowing every month since we closed on it.
And I guess other than what you just mentioned there, which is being impressed by Rob, what other factors led you to feeling comfortable with your partnership with Lone Star Capital? And I guess other sponsors that you worked with, I guess you can start with us, but then just generally speaking, naturally you come from the military background and I'm not mistaken, you manage many people as well. So you probably identify things and people and characteristics and traits and people that are parallel to what you're doing currently, but in other realms of life. So how do you gatekeep that process and judge character and make your, decisions?
Yes, we did 3 deals with one operator, which is a good friend, Brian Briscoe. Him and I met in 2019, and that's when we was getting into the multifamily space. Now, what's unique about Brian Briscoe is that he is a retired Marine Corps lieutenant colonel. When you start talking about a lieutenant colonel level and a master sergeant level, we typically work together as a commanding officer and one of the senior enlisted in the command. So right then and there, we had instant credibility amongst ourselves. So we did 3 deals with them. And that was three deals that we have exit one of them, and we still hold on to two of them. One we have in the market to sell, and the other next one had a few years to go. So trust the guy as a Marine leader, and he's also a he's a mathematician. There
Yeah.
you go. So he's really good with as well. So the numbers are what the numbers are, Craig, but as the operators is what really made those numbers work.
So you basically, for you to even get comfortable, it's a non-starter on a deal level without you having a relationship and knowing the people and I guess their background. And then after that, it's more deal specific questions potentially. Is that a fair assessment?
A fair assessment.
Awesome. That said, are you ever going to be open to raising for any other opportunity or asset classes? Or are you just only going to niche down, focus solely on the multifamily space?
No, we do have our eyes set on a fund model to where we can bring more diversity to our investors in the future. But right now, our focus is multifamily.
Absolutely. With that
Yes, sir.
said, where do you think opportunities lie coming up? Because it sounds like you like the B range. There's certainly a looming recession coming up, it would
Yeah.
seem. Although, who knows with the tinkering, who knows with all this inflation, the money's got to stay somewhere. So we're all waiting for it to happen, but it may never happen, right? Or it may look differently. It typically always looks different from what people anticipate. But where do you think the opportunities lie? What's getting you excited and what's getting you nervous with what's to come?
Yeah. So when I came to the Lone Star Capital Summit out in New York, we had a panel. We had some lenders there, and one of the things they were talking about is the willingness to work with the operators, because a lot of those bridge debt lenders are actually operators themselves. So they can actually take over a deal that is in distress, financial distress, and they can operate it. They can foreclose on the deal and they can operate it and get it better. But most banks are not in the business of owning real estate. So they're working with the operators to create different systems to ensure that the deal continue to perform, but also there's a plan on the back end to recover whatever the losses the banks might be having in these times. Uh, you and I, we got access to some of the same reports and information. We're looking at about $90 billion of real estate that's going to be in distress. A significant of those already in distress and in foreclosure process. It's good to partner with teams like yours who are building out the infrastructure, the management piece, and also the fund model and bringing out of capital raises into the fund model to be able to acquire those deals that may be the one has in a market with good fundamentals and the property itself just did not have good finance to begin with as far as the adjustable rate mortgage goes. So it's good to partner with guys like you guys who are in the market, who are ready to develop the relationship with some of the prominent brokers and also have the backing with different level of finances, also relationship with different cities and county governments, and also with the capital raisers to be able to take down larger deals or deals that might be in distress. So I think we'll see yourself in late 2024 and early 2025 is property that have good fundamentals in good markets, but are in financial distress because they took on bridge debt or adjustable rate mortgages a few years ago and
It
not able
seems
to
like
afford they're not able to afford a rate cap.
bad debt and equity structure typically is what
Correct.
the issue is right now because if you have a maturity now coming up, it's either three solutions, right? It's either or three outcomes. It's your property gets foreclosed on, you have an equity infusion, or you have a
Right.
workout of sorts. So those, if you're in that kind of camp there, those kind of are your three options. On the other end of the coin, though, on a more positive side, what is getting you excited? Is it bringing in new investors and riding the wave up now that you're positioned correctly with the multifamily knowledge to hit big returns? Like, what is getting you most thrilled and keeping you stoked and smiling and chipper outside of your day to day as it pertains to this world we're in currently?
Yeah, I think for me, Craig, it's more clarity. As I get closer to retirement, then there's certain actions that I need to take to my points I was making earlier, as far as what's required for the transition from the Marine Corps into civilian life and still be able to put good food on my family's table, good and probably better food on the family's table, but also bringing other veterans with me. That's getting me really excited. I just see how much time I will have whenever I retire from the Marine Corps to focus on making a bigger impact in helping people, especially our veterans, put better food on their family's table and also creating vehicles for their family for generations to come. That's what my focus is. And it get me really excited because the more I learn is the more I can lean in and give and pay back to our veterans.
No, I love that. And I can only speak to this personally. I'm so excited to get out of bed every single day. I dread the weekends because I can't be as productive as I am during the weekdays. And that's serious. It's always been more fun to me to work and to really take care of stuff. And now I'm in a position where I can truly build something that's bigger than myself. And then even on
Yes.
your end, I relate that and contrast that back to you because you'll be able to speak to some people and set up opportunities for individuals who may not have that education, may not have that background, and you can build up people's lives and serve a bigger purpose, whether it be speaking at some point to veterans and having that community, having that niche there. For you to be able to triple down on that could only enhance your capital raising stuff and business to monetize it, but also it's speaking to a bigger community and having a bigger reach and impact, which is so special to enhance everyone's life. So that's just truly remarkable. It's very commendable. I really am proud to be speaking to you about that and helping enhance that platform. With that said, I always like to ask this question to end. Do you have any sort of real estate hot take or contrarian viewpoint or opinion that's a little bit different than the average person that maybe you hold true to you, or that's a little bit unique or outside of people's typical thought processes?
Now, certain things that goes on in our brain housing group that we got to be careful how we articulate it, especially while we're in active duty. But look, I'm a firm believer that you really can craft your own destiny. See, a lot of us are religious and we give all the credit to God for when great things happen, but at times we don't accept responsibility for not taking the appropriate actions to achieve the greatness that our God created us to achieve. Here's the biggest thing that I like to tell folks is don't pray for miracles if you're not willing to do your part of the miracle process. Because there's so many things in life that we can achieve. You really can achieve anything that you put your mind to and is willing to take the necessary action and never freaking quit until the mission is accomplished.
So you have that mindset of manifesting, but be able to put the work in to achieve that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
You have to pray, but keep moving.
Where can people find you, get in touch with you, reach out to you? Of course, you mentioned you're in Hawaii. I don't know how long you'll be there for. For those who maybe want to meet up, learn more about you, what you got going on, your mission, your purpose, how can people find, reach out to you?
So look, if you are a veteran that wants to learn about real estate, or more specifically, if you are retired veterans that are accredited investors that own a small business, if you're in Hawaii, let's get together. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Hutch the Marine Investor, or go to 8 Square Capital and download your operations manual to learn how you can leverage what we do as real estate syndicator to let your capital work harder for you, harder than you've worked for it.
I love that. Thank you so much for being a partner, for saying yes to Lone Star to work with us, and for your service, and for really serving a place in society and in the world that is super valuable. I just very proud to call you a partner, to call you now a friend. We get to see each other often due to the conferences and networks we're in, but I just truly want to thank you so much for your 20-year, 2-decade experience in the military, for keeping us safe, for allowing us to have the freedoms to do what we want and choose our life. So thank you so much to you and to all the active duty and veterans out there for your service. For all those who are listening, thank you for listening today. We'll catch you next week. Peace.
Appreciate you, brother.